we're talking about body dysmorphic disorder today, which I really love working with clients because I think body image is such a prevalent issue for so many people, and especially now because it's like, you know, it's across genders, races, all of that good stuff. Like, there's really not anyone who's sadly, and not anyone who's not safe from having body image disruption. So I think it's a good topic to learn a lot about. So, and this one is commonly, I mean, I'll say this, body image issues is a pretty common comorbidity. So even if you don't have a client with BDD, my hope is that some of this stuff today will still be relevant, even for clients who are just struggling with body image issues. And I'll have some resources too for even when it's not full-blown BDD, but there are appearance concerns that I will give to Lisa to share with you guys later. So hopefully this is helpful. All right. So, so we got, just to start, I know the pre-training video you guys watched already had the diagnostic criteria. So just wanted to emphasize a few things about this diagnosis that I think are important to know. And first and foremost, that this is a body image problem that looks and functions a lot like OCD. OCD is very prevalent when you're working with someone with BDD. So a lot of the cognitive issues and behavioral issues that you would see in OCD will be likely presenting in BDD, just that it's more focused on body image rather than, you know, contamination or harm or things like that. So just that, wanted to point that out. And then I'm going to show you guys a short animated video that does a really great job summarizing what BDD is, the symptoms and the possible causes, so that we don't spend too much time on it. And then I kind of put a bunch on this slide for you guys too. So let me pull up my video here.
What is it? Classified under
Can you guys hear it too? Yeah, okay.
Obsessive compulsive and related disorders in the DSM-5. Body dysmorphia is a condition where your brain cannot stop fixating on a perceived flaw or defect in your appearance. These flaws are often not noticeable to others, but your perception of them may cause you to feel embarrassed or anxious, especially when in social situations. It can feel like looking at yourself through a funhouse mirror, where what you see is vastly different from what others do. Symptoms. Since body dysmorphia often makes you focus on only your flaws, you may develop anxiety over how you look, which can lead to habits such as repetitive grooming as a result. While these habits may exist as coping mechanisms and forms of reassurance, they can be disruptive to your everyday life and thus emotionally distressing. According to Johns Hopkins Medicine, some common symptoms of body dysmorphia are avoiding mirrors, constant exercise, and grooming, frequent weighing, picking or pinching your body, attempting to hide parts of your body, and avoiding social activities. In addition, there are other psychological and emotional symptoms as well. Body dysmorphia can make you believe that there's something wrong with you, even though there isn't. It tricks you into believing that others can see your flaws. As a consequence, you may fall into self-destructive behaviors, such as purging, restrictive dieting, binge eating, and over-exercising. In your desire to fix yourself, you may even pay for unnecessary surgeries that put you and your health at risk. Possible causes. Body dysmorphia can affect anyone, regardless of gender. There are no specific causes for body dysmorphia, but doctors believe that several factors may play a part, including one's medical history, brain chemistry, personality type, and life experiences. Treatment.
All right, we're gonna get into treatment later, so I don't want to show you guys and ruin the surprise yet. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. So they were talking about brain chemistry for possible causes. We're gonna something that I found, and this is a little bit new from the last time I did this presentation, but they're doing studies about this. And the second video I'm going to show you guys in a second actually came from the study that they're showing this data that people with BDD basically have overactive visual and prefrontal cortexes, which cause them to look at themselves and others very differently than someone who doesn't have BDD. So it's very interesting. So just a little tidbit about updates in terms of the research. So basically what that video kind of summarized pretty well. I mean, the big question is, what is body image for this? And I want to give people a crack at what body image is to them first before I talk about this. Anyone who wants to explain body image? How a body looks, yep. How someone looks, feels, or perceives their body. Yeah. I would say it's your relationship with how you view yourself. Yeah. It's more the relationship and the perception is the thing about body image, because it is kind of a mental representation that we have of our physical appearance. So I describe it kind of like this way when I'm teaching clients or families, that it's like a photograph you have of your body, which means it's distorted because it doesn't have the same qualities as the original thing, and especially in people with BDD. So sometimes I'll even have them experiment with this idea by taking pictures of or drawing other objects or other people or other pets, just to see how different what they see in real life is compared to that picture or that drawing, which is really, really helpful for people to kind of grasp that, because we really want people to see it is different. And the pre-training video you guys watch makes a pretty helpful point that I want to re-emphasize here, that even when someone's appearance does not physically change, their body image can still change, which is pretty crazy. So it's definitely a mental thing, and very, very, very based on perception, and the idea behind perception. So why this is an important concept to continue reminding clients of, I think they also provided a few more examples in the pre-training video, because we kind of want, I have perceived flaws here. They give some in the pre-training video also, but just to see that these lists are not exhaustive, because the brain can literally distort anything to do with the body or physical appearance when this disorder in particular is present, or if enough attention is focused on a body part. Because like, you could sit here right now and start to come up with all sorts of things about your hand if you sat here and stared at your hand for like an hour that you probably never noticed before. And sometimes I'll do that exercise with clients, is I'll just have them, sit there and really dig into what a body part, not one that they're distressed about, but one that they're not distressed about. I'll have them sit there and stare at it and see what changes about how they look at that body part, which can be really helpful too. So just for fun, can anyone think of anything else that's not on this list that could be perceived like as a flaw or kind of become concerning for people? Any ideas?
You guys are welcome to put the chat, or you can also raise your hands. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah.
Mine is more of a question, so it could be the answer, but can the way clothes fit be part of this? Because I have a teenage boy who is very much like, if my sock doesn't fit the right way, someone will judge me. My t-shirts, my hoodies,
Yes.
Part of this. So
yeah, like if it depends on the person, but like if there's more loose fabric, if it's not touching certain body parts, that could become something they get fixated on for sure. Or like if something is too tight near a body part, they could get fixated on that for sure. If it looks frumpy or big, that will be perceived a certain way for sure. That's a really good example. Yeah, Michelle.
I have a client who's very concerned about toes specifically. She is very aware. I guess her second toe is longer and she feels like the asymmetry really bothers her, and she won't paint her toenails. Even summer because she feels that everybody notices it.
Yeah. Yeah. See, so it can literally be anything. And that one is a good example in particular of like, you know, kind of that OCD function kind of coming in there. It was because we got symmetry going on. So really that's why I want to say like this is really an extension of OCD. And it's helpful to think of it that way, because genuinely someone with BDD is seeing that body part differently than other people are. So then it's, you know, working with that. We're going to get into treatment later, but that's a great example. And then I saw some other kind of shorter, longer body parts, and kind of perceiving that is a good one. Cellulite, yeah, that could be another one for sure. Because again, it's like this idea of like there's an imperfection in the skin or the body. What was the other one? Hips is another one. Yes, it is. Yeah, Lee.
I had a question actually.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak to like beauty standards, like changing beauty standards and how body dysmorphia reacts or surfaces, because I think like with beauty trends there are aspects of beauty that are like highlighted and celebrated, and then there are also like new flaws that like didn't seem to be cause for concern, I don't know, 10 years ago or however long ago. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Definitely. That has become, I feel like it keeps getting worse because we just have more access to like all different things that you could be worried about. It's kind of like exploded with, beauty consumerism has kind of exploded too, because there's like, you know, 8 million ways to take care of your skin, or, you know, make a certain body part look a certain way. I think Ozempic was a big kind of changer in terms of how people see their bodies and what they can do to their bodies. So there's a lot less acceptance around just the body as it is by itself. And I think it's made a lot of people more at risk of developing BDD, especially if they're already predisposed to something like OCD. And then they also have more access because everybody's, you know, looking at TikToks and Instagram videos, and, you know, they're scrolling, and they're just getting inundated with all of that information about like what they should or shouldn't look like. And now, you know, it's not just you should be skinny, it's like 8 million different things. So that's a really, really good point, Lee. I think it makes this much more prevalent is my answer. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Michelle.
I'm just curious, as we're talking more about like the digital stuff, like AI and the way people present themselves, even creating images. My friend does hair. She said people bring in pictures and all the hair is overcreated, and people think there's something wrong with them because that's not what their hair is like, but it's not real.
Yeah.
So does that idea of, it's almost like virtual reality walking around all the time now. So have you found AI? I guess the answer, I'm guessing, will be more prevalence only because it's just a standard that's not even human. It's not real.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet in practice, but I'm sure that's right around the corner, because I agree with you. I think it would affect, you know, the way people perceive how they look, because yeah, they have this artificial version of themselves that they can manipulate in any way, and then they take that and they match it up with, these are actual pictures of me, or this is how I look in the mirror, and they're comparing the two and they're like, I don't like that doesn't line up. So that's going to cause cognitive dissonance for sure. I think that's a great point. You guys are bringing up great topics, by the way. These are great questions. I didn't even think about the AI piece. I'm sure that's going to affect it. Any other quick questions? Okay. I'll show you guys another quick video because I want you guys to get a sense of, and I did this last time I did this training, a sense of like how it feels, how it looks to have a client in front of you who's presenting with this. So you're not shocked when it comes through the door. Let me pull this up. See if I can switch this right. Okay. This is a pretty short video too.
You know, when I look in the mirror, I look at everything about my body, and I think more so my legs. Right now, even just looking in the mirror, this is very wide. And it's wide, but, you know, it's okay. I have to think it's fine. Like, everyone's legs are wider when they sit down and big and whatnot. But, yeah, I focus on that.
Sorry about the
on a bad
subtitles.
day, it's, you know, or a bad week, it'll be every day I just like, oh God, wow, I look awful. I sort of try and keep it to myself. I never really show anyone it because I'm so ashamed of feeling this way. It's really hard. Like even just sitting next to you now, it's like, you're beautiful and tiny, and then I feel like a little elephant next to you. That's how it sort of makes me feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I mean, what is the impact of all of that on you?
Tiring, really tiring. I sort of wish that I didn't have it so I could just live a normal life with friends and just enjoy life itself. Sorry. Something like this that consumes my mind so much is so difficult. It's just constantly there. Like, honestly, I just hate what I see. Like, I just can't stand it.
I think that video does a pretty good job kind of showing how this really is to have it, because it really is distressing and disturbing for the person who has it. And it is very emotional. When I've seen clients with it, it is very emotional for them to talk about it, especially if they're first finding out they have BDD. It is a pretty emotional process. So I just point that out just to have you guys be prepared for something like that. And that, you know, not everybody will be off the bat super comfortable talking about this. So any questions about just presentation like that? Because we're gonna talk about diagnosing it, but yeah, I can give tips if it's helpful. Otherwise I'll move on. All right, so to figure out if someone is experiencing a body image problem and BDD, you would need to be asking several critical questions during the clinical interview or intake. And it can be also really beneficial for your conceptualization and understanding of the development of the client's BDD to ask some of these other ones I have on this slide, more specific background history questions. And the other pre-training video also mentioned some pretty helpful measures that would allow you to collect some more useful data and better determine BDD. So one really popular one is the BDDQ, the Body Dysmorphic Disorder Questionnaire. And I'm gonna provide links to all of these in the slides that Lisa's gonna give you guys after with all the resources and stuff. So you guys have this. I can't remember if the BDDQ is in therapy notes or not yet. It might be. And then there's also the Y-BOX modified for BDD in specific, which is really good for identifying preoccupations and compulsive behaviors, but they only have one for adults. So if you were trying to use this, I would just modify it a little bit to try to use for kids, because it really does. I mean, the better your conceptualization, the better the treatment. So I would still use it even though it's meant for adults if you don't have an adult client. I have used it in that way before. Okay, so let me move on. Next one. This is another quiz that I pulled from Building Body Acceptance Workbook, which kind of gives a nice Likert scale questionnaire, which can be helpful. And you can also use your clinical judgment to see if it makes sense to have your client, you know, either draw or write a description of their self-portrait, or have them focus in on, if they're comfortable, just focus in on just the areas of the body that they're experiencing distress around. Because yeah, for me, the more info I have on how that disorder is presenting, the better. So feel free to utilize all of these. I just wanted to give you guys kind of comprehensive stuff. Okay. So case conceptualization, the pre-training video gives the CBT or the social learning model for BDD. I'm going to go over more of like the BDD maintenance model, again, from that workbook that I just brought up earlier, Building Body Acceptance, which makes a little more, I don't know, it makes more sense to me to describe it this way, and it's easier to explain to clients and families. And we'll kind of look at this in the next couple of slides a little bit more. So, and make sure you pay attention because we are going to do a case example later. But you can always refer back to these slides when we're doing the case example. So at the heart of BDD lays certain unhelpful appearance related assumptions, often involving inaccurate or inflexible kind of if-then statements that you can see there. And most of these have often developed due to clients' past experiences. So, you know, their social media experiences, their AI experiences we'll throw in there as new ones, but it can also be, you know, bullying or cyberbullying, or it could be, you know, parents' own values and views and communication and expression about body image. Just to name a few early examples that they might come across. And then more events can usually trigger or exacerbate your client's underlying appearance concerns by either supporting or threatening to support their appearance assumptions. And then we have this negative body image. And then I give examples of the triggers that would, you know, support or threaten to support appearance concerns there. You guys are welcome to look back at that if you need. Okay, so, and just to start to get into kind of the rest of how people engage with their negative body image. So in the red box there, usually what happens is clients will have, you know, these unanswerable questions that are going on in their head, like, why do I look like this? Or self-criticisms, like, I'm so ugly, or could be fantasies, like, if I was taller, then I could do blah, 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 blah. Or overgeneralizations is another big one, like, this pimple is going to ruin my entire appearance today. Could be more like worry or anxiety. So what if people laugh at me? Or maybe negative reflections on the past. So if I hadn't had that skin treatment, then I wouldn't look like this right now, sort of kind of like that. And then in this yellow box, I was going to ask you guys for some ideas of what you think would fall into these checking and reassurance seeking behaviors. What do you guys think that looks like for a BDD client? Yeah, Jessica.
The one teenage girl I have is she takes pictures of herself and then zooms in to see the body parts and then compares like a month ago and zooms in, compares like from middle school and we'll zoom in and stuff. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. They do look like compare to past images too. That's a pretty common one. And now like, I mean, one of my clients, like, she goes into Instagram pictures and she's like zooming in on body parts like that. And she thinks that that's what everybody else is doing too.
So that's a good one. Yes. Emma.
Yeah, I have two. So one is like asking friends before, like if you get ready to go out. Like I have a client who has to like ask their friends, do I look okay? Or like, does this outfit look okay? Or like, does my skin look okay? Things like that. And then also like checking certain clothing items like daily or weekly to see if they like still fit a certain way as well could be one.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, it varies on who will ask peers. I think it's a complicated thing because sometimes they'll be embarrassed that they're thinking about this stuff and they don't want other people to know they're insecure about it, so they won't always ask peers, but some will. Or if, you know, their parents have stopped giving them reassurance, they might then gravitate towards peers. So those are also good examples. The mirror looking is a good one. And then Michelle, you had some ideas.
I had a client who canceled a job interview because she didn't feel she looked perfect in the mirror.
Yes.
So she was so afraid that it would, and it was something like she didn't like the way her hair was laying that day or a wave pattern, you know. And the night before she had been like, but my pores look so small, she'd used a magnifying mirror and like was looking close up. So it wasn't just like a mirror, it was like the magnifying. And she's like, I'm gonna get this job because like basically I have glass skin. But the next morning she woke up and the curve of her hair wasn't right, so she canceled.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that'll fall into the avoidance behaviors, but absolutely. That will also kind of keep their appearance preoccupation around because they never get to challenge this idea of like, okay, if I do go to that appointment or I do go to that presentation, I get to see, you know, is it really as bad as I thought it would go, you know, and challenge their negative predictions, which we're going to get to in the green box. But yeah, yes, definitely. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, just to name some more, I mean, they'll use any reflective surfaces. The mirror one is in particular one that I would focus in if I was treating someone for this, because you want to show them there is a mirror exercise, I think in that workbook I was talking about earlier, where you have them kind of compare, and you want to be careful with this one, by the way. I don't do this with someone until we've done a lot of psychoeducation and we've built a lot of rapport. But you'll have them basically kind of look at what they imagine the size of some body part is in the mirror, and then have them actually measure it and see how distorted it is, because the mirror, it either makes things very small or very big. So it's a good exercise to show your clients that. Other things they'll do, they'll check their body visually by touch or mentally kind of scanning, because we do have mental compulsions with this as well. They'll try to verify their experience by taking a picture or a video. Videos become a lot more prevalent, I've seen. Not so much measuring parts of their body anymore, not that I've seen. That used to be a big thing. Or they'll make comparisons like we were talking about earlier. They'll ask family members, friends, professionals about their appearance, either to reassure themselves that it's okay or to reassure themselves that this is a real problem by convincing others of the whatever the flaw is. And then in the green box there, this also will be a strategy that happens because of their negative body image. And again, this is all to get that relief, right? Just like how we know with the OCD cycle, it's all to get relief from the anxiety that this brings. But the green box, you know, we're kind of getting more into like, they'll overestimate the likelihood that other people will respond to their appearance in a negative way. Or they'll underestimate their ability to cope with that if it did happen. They'll also discount any information that suggests that things will not be as bad as they predicted. So for example, you know, they might overlook all the times that they've been to social events and no one's made a negative comment to them regarding their appearance, or where they've even been complimented. They'll just completely discount that and ignore that. Because again, we're doing confirmation bias with this basically. And then for the blue, so Michelle brought up a good avoidance one. Any other ideas for avoidance or safety behaviors people want to take a guess at? Extensive skincare routine, absolutely. Yeah, not going to school. Yeah, you will see school refusal sometimes if it's a teen. Or like young adult too. Or like not going to work. What else? Other ideas? Ty. Oh yeah, you said not going out with friends and family. Who was that? Oh, Lee, you raised your hand. Sorry.
Sorry. I was thinking about a little girl who doesn't want to go to ballet class if her ballet bun, the part in the hair isn't exactly straight. So I guess that kind of falls into the green and blue box, and I guess the yellow box, as far as like avoidance, but also making like ballet class is going to go bad if the hair isn't right, more or less.
Yeah. By the way, we see this a lot with dancers. If you guys were wondering, like if there's certain sports that kind of lead into BDD, it's kind of a mix of like, okay, did they have this OCD predisposition, and then they're doing something where their physical appearance is very evaluated. So dancer is a pretty common one. But yeah, all of those things would kind of fall into these strategies. Any other ideas? Yeah, Michelle.
I guess more or less have a question, a clarifying question off what you said about like dancers. Because that's like an experience or an expectation. And it made me think about new moms, right? Like as your sort of identity changes, and obviously pregnancy can change a body. And then we'll see women like, I'm not going to wear what I used to wear, or I'm not going to go there because I haven't lost my baby weight. Is that a form of of the body dysmorphia, or is that something separate if it's related to postpartum?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to kind of assess because it depends. Sometimes they won't meet full-blown criteria for BDD, but it can certainly kind of lead to that. You're right. Like pregnancy is a big one. Puberty is a big one.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're on the right track for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I think gymnasts is another one, because again, like they're being judged on how they look too. It's not just their performance. So or ice skating is another one. Trying to think of other ones. Bodybuilding for sure. A lot of bodybuilders have BDD. Cheerleading, yeah, absolutely. That could fall into it. Yeah, these are great examples, guys. I think if there's anything else for this blue box that I've seen. Sometimes people will only go on dates or parties that they know like the lighting won't be very harsh or very light. So they'll look for, poorly lit settings, or they'll only socialize with trusted people that they are very confident won't make any comments about their appearance. Or they'll avoid eye contact with people. They'll kind of arrange their clothing to draw attention away from that body part they think is flawed. Clothing as avoidance. Yep, exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that. I think, or they'll, I have a client who will hold her body or her face in certain postures or positions so that the area that she's concerned about won't be seen as much. So even to that degree, that'll be a safety behavior to look out for. Or covering. I mean, during COVID, the mask was a big one too. Yeah, Sarah.
What about with I'm thinking of when there's a snow day and it's like e-learning and you're on Zoom, or like a lot of people work from home now and you're on Zoom, like would
Yeah.
be not turning on your camera be a form of avoidance?
Yeah. So I try to with clients, like if they're already willing to kind of get on camera, you want to keep that going. But if they're not in the beginning, you kind of want to work them up to that so that they're doing actual exposure to this, especially if it's like a really severe case and they're not going to school, they're not going to work. Like you do want to practice having them kind of be on camera. But yeah, that's absolutely a way that it'll present. Good point. Okay. All right. And then just to finish off the case conceptualization. So what ends up happening with this vicious BDD cycle is a lot of the appearance assumptions underlying the problem stay intact, like I said before, as your client's 4 strategies just kind of strengthen the perceived importance of physical appearance and then deprive them of the opportunity to build a tolerance for their imperfections or an acceptance of their imperfections, which everybody needs, by the way. I think that's just like across the board a good thing to have in your back pocket of like, can I just, tolerate this? They don't get to see what really happens when they put their real or their imperfect self out there in the world instead of hiding away or covering up. And often people with BDD, who like they'll finally test out their assumptions via exposure or behavioral experiment, and the outcomes are often quite different and far less disastrous than they originally predicted. So that's kind of the idea behind exposure. And then I have the long-term impacts of the actual behaviors there. Okay.
Dr. Bartlett, just a quick time check. We have about 10 minutes. Just
Okay.
I know.
Oh man, this always goes by so fast. Okay, so I'm trying to think if I'm just looking at what would be most important to cover. I have well,
And you're always welcome to come back too. But yes,
yeah.
however you want to manage it.
Just I guess a real quick note here on motivational interviewing. I just had some questions here because sometimes people with BDD will hold these positive beliefs about staying preoccupied with their appearance and think it's a helpful thing to do. But if you help them to kind of question this, have open-ended questions, Socratic questioning, you kind of help them to realize that focusing their attention on their appearance doesn't bring any real or lasting benefit, basically, is the idea with this slide. Because I think that ends up being a really big treatment barrier for people, is because they hold on to those beliefs really tightly. So you can look more at those questions, but we'll keep moving. And then as far as treatment goes, this has ICBT for BDD on there twice. But that's a great treatment tool. Maybe that's why it's on there twice. But yeah, psychoed, should encompass body image, negative body image. What is BDD? Negative impacts of BDD, how it develops, evidence-based treatments, how families or partners can support and not accommodate or reassure their loved ones' BDD. Cognitive restructuring is great for teaching the client to really recognize, label, and challenge their problematic thinking patterns and errors about their appearance. Exposures, I already explained that. The pre-training video doesn't mention ICBT, but it is particularly module 10 with the tricks of the BDD con artist, I have found is an awesome tool for creating some great aha moments and realizations with clients. So I highly recommend that. I think that's why it's on there twice. It's like, I really want to hit ICBT for BDD. And then attention training is beneficial for helping them reduce their appearance preoccupation, because the goal is to gradually practice redirecting their focus on something else. And then using meditation or mindfulness is another way they can practice being present focused, despite having this overactive wandering mind that gravitates towards their visual cues. and disengage from that negative preoccupation with their appearance. So it's kind of like allowing the anxious thoughts to be present in the mind and the body, and then shift the attention back to an anchor like breathing. So that's a lot of what mindfulness is. And then last but not least, you can kind of, well, what do you guys think? How would acceptance and diffusion from ACT be helpful for a BDD client? It'll be good constructive learning here. How would you frame that?
I haven't really done this, but I'm guessing you could look at even like the radical acceptance of this is what it is for today. You know, what can we control? What can we move forward with? But I don't know, that's sort of stab.
No, exactly. Yeah, Shelby.
Yeah, what Michelle said, I also was thinking diffusion of like that thought diffusion of this is my leg. What are the other, besides like from a cosmetic reason, what are the other purposes that my legs serve? Like it gives me the ability to walk, run. So kind of diffusing like what our bodies actually do versus what they look like.
Yeah. And similar to what we do with OCD, you could make the BDD a separate voice or character to diffuse. But yeah, that would help. Sydney.
I would say for the acceptance part, it would be like not particularly trying to get rid of the negative thought about our bodies or how we perceive our bodies, but practicing like letting the thought be there, not letting it run your life and run the show too.
Yes. Yeah. Because we do really get to choose, you know, if we're gonna chase the thoughts or we're gonna get all entangled in them. So that's the idea with ACT. Yeah. And I think to me, like this is very similar with OCD, that clients do really have to learn to live with this, because what we're seeing from the data from research on this and the studies being done on it is this is not something that's just going to go away, because this is literally how they see the world around them. Their visualization of the world around them is different, their environment. So I think learning to live with it is a better idea sometimes. And maybe in concert with all of these other, you know, treatment modalities. Okay, I think that's everybody. All right, so I'm probably not going to go into the case example. I'd rather take your guys' questions if you have questions about certain clients that you are seeing or things you're wondering more about. I'll leave this up just as a way for you guys to kind of see how you would kind of lay out the treatment process. This is just an example of how I might go through treatment with a client I suspect is dealing with BDD, and we've assessed, just to give you guys an idea of how that would look. And what I will emphasize about this is that treating this condition is most definitely not a linear journey. Just really want to hit that point home, because I have never seen it look linear, by the way. Especially when you're treating comorbidities as well, because the nature of BDD requires, you know, a lot of patience, a lot of persistence, and then throw comorbidities on top of it, and you have quite a lot to deal with in treatment wise. Very similar to how we treat OCD again. But yeah, any questions or cases that anyone wanted to talk about or get some feedback on?
But I'm even curious, yeah, the exposures that you're doing, like examples of exposures, and maybe it's just so obvious to some of you guys, but I would love to hear some of that too.
Yeah, just real quick, in terms of exposures, at least for the clients I have right now, we're in particular working on, because both of them actually are covering up reflective surfaces, so they're straight up avoiding. So we're working on getting them comfortable with seeing their physical appearance in reflective surfaces. So a lot of it is, you know, we'll spend more and more bouts of time looking at themselves and sitting with all the feelings that come up. So that would be just examples of exposures, but there's tons and tons of ideas for exposures for this, which is really cool. Michelle.
I have a question. I guess if someone has like a physical difference, like a cleft lip palate or something that is a physical marker, do you ever see an increase in BMDD with them? And if so, is there any changes in the way we would treat it? Like if it does exist, but they are zoned in on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because then I would go more like the acceptance and commitment therapy route and like learning to live with, a physical defect that they might be getting treatment for, they might not. It's really up to the person, but learning to kind of psychologically live with whatever that is would be more of my approach for that versus like you're doing cognitive errors and we're going to fix your thoughts, because there really is a physical difference.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Emma.
I have a client, BDD is not the primary diagnosis that we're treating, but they engaged in a lot of avoidance behaviors at first. And then they started weight loss medication and then have lost weight. And now their body satisfaction has gone up, but the preoccupation and checking behaviors have also increased a lot. And so I'm curious, like, how to approach that.
Yeah, so you're doing a lot of response prevention then with something like that. So it would be reducing the frequency. So first you would assess, just as at a baseline, what the average frequency is that they're doing the checking. And then you would kind of make a hierarchy, cutting down how much time they're spending on it or how many checks that they do. It depends on, if it's easier to do time or how many times, dependent on the person. But that's how I would approach exposure for something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And it actually brings up a really good point, Emma. There's a lot of people who are struggling with this now because of the Ozempic stuff. Like, and they're still doing the psychological thing, which is, it's a lot. But yeah, it's interesting to me. Meg.
Do you ever find that this is like comorbid with BFRBs? And if it is, like, how some of the ways you work with BFRBs are like covering mirrors and stuff, but how do you do that, navigate that, or treat that without like enabling avoidance or safety behaviors? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you'd have to do a really good like functional assessment, really, like, between all the behaviors, like what I haven't seen that personally in terms of like cases of this. But yeah, I imagine it could happen theoretically. Because I imagine people have appearance concerns once they're like, pulling hair or picking at scabs, and then, now they're bleeding or, they have parts of their body that are affected and wounded. I imagine they could develop appearance concerns. So I guess, a lot of the same treatments for that. But if there's a mirror issue, again, really for both, we're kind of trying to find an adaptive amount or an appropriate amount of looking, basically, kind of a middle ground.
So this is maybe just a little like weirdly specific, but I'm curious, like, if you handle things differently in a case where something like an athlete, like professional athlete, who their livelihood is somewhat based upon their appearance, just because in a lot of cases nowadays, contracts can be based on your marketability. Like I just wonder if throwing that wrench into things changes how you would handle a case.
Yeah, because I mean, I look at it like I'll talk to the client about goal in the long term, like what would be most sustainable for them and realistic given their profession. Because they can't do their profession if they're also struggling with this mentally. So I kind of level with them about that and say, like, look, realistically, if you want to keep doing this, like, that's fine, but we have to find, that balance of, can I, monitor and keep my body healthy and marketable, but not get over preoccupied and fixated on it and checking it all the time, because that's also not healthy. So it's kind of finding that balance again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hannah.
So I also have 11, so I'll be super quick, but I'm just having trouble kind of differentiating like what is age appropriate for especially like a middle schooler who has a lot of insecurities and starting to become more in tune with their body and how others perceive them and comparing themselves to others. And so kind of figuring out, because I've had this client for a bit, I believe she's 12, kind of figuring out if that's age appropriate or if it's BDD.
Yeah, I think, well, a couple things. Usually this is starting to happen around like, at the earliest, like pre-pubescent or during puberty, right after puberty, kind of around that time. And I always look for really how much time is spent thinking about this, and then the behaviors that are coming from that, to kind of determine, are we at a normal level of being self-conscious about how we look, because you're a teenager and you're kind of, in that fragile stage of caring about what other people think. But when does it start to become, I guess, maladaptive or unhealthy in terms of like how much time is spent on either looking, thinking, or doing certain behaviors like checking, reassurance seeking, or avoidance. And like, obviously, we have a problem if someone is not going to school, or if they're not going to like their interested activities, the activities they like or previously liked. That's a big problem. So I would consider that kind of the atypical if they're starting to do that. But yeah, it's pretty much like, at the earliest it's going to be onset, like I said, pre-pubescent or pubescent or after puberty. It's a good